Have you ever shared something deeply personal with someone only to wish years later that you'd kept it to yourself? Maybe it was a story from your past, a fear you've never voiced before, a vision for your future that felt too bold to say aloud. And once it was out there, something shifted. The way they looked at you changed. The way you saw yourself changed. And instead of feeling lighter, you felt exposed. Carl Jung once said, "The things you hide control you more than you know." But that doesn't mean everything must be revealed. In fact, Jung believed that some truths are not meant to be shared casually. Not because they are shameful, but because they are sacred. Because until they are fully understood, fully integrated, they are still vulnerable. And in the wrong hands, they can be twisted, misunderstood, or even weaponized against you. You see, we live in a culture that glorifies openness. Speak your truth. Be transparent. Tell the world who you are. And while there's value in honesty, there's also wisdom in discretion. Jung believed that real transformation doesn't begin with confession. It begins with self-awareness, and that not all truths need to be spoken to be powerful. Some need to be held, nurtured, healed before they're shared with anyone. Because here's the reality: when you reveal a part of yourself that you haven't fully healed, you hand someone else the ability to define it. And not everyone knows how to hold that kind of truth with care. So in this video, we're going to explore 5 personal truths that Carl Jung warned us to keep hidden, not forever, but until we're strong enough to carry them without needing others to carry them for us. Each one of these truths touches a deep part of the human psyche. Our fear, our shame, our sacrifices, our inner desires, and our spiritual awakenings. And the reason they're dangerous to share too soon is because they are still in the process of becoming, still tender, still forming. So if you've ever been made to feel foolish for something you believed in, if someone ever used your vulnerability as ammunition, or if you're currently holding something inside not out of fear, but out of wisdom, this video is for you. And as we go through each of these truths, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. What am I still protecting? Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm healing. Not the kind that makes you jump at a loud noise. Not the fear of height spiders or public speaking. I'm talking about the kind of fear that lives deeper. The kind you don't speak of, not because you can't find the words, but because the words feel too raw. Carl Jung called this our shadow, the hidden part of the psyche that contains everything we've rejected, suppressed, or feared we couldn't control. And within that shadow lies our deepest fear. It might be the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being judged, the fear of never being good enough, or maybe the fear of becoming exactly who we're trying not to be. And here's the truth. You don't really know someone until you know what they're afraid of, because our fears shape how we love, how we protect ourselves, how we react, and most dangerously, how we hide. Jung believed that what we fear most isn't outside of us, it's within us. And yet we live in a world that pushes us to be vulnerable, to be open, to speak our truth. But here's the danger of sharing your deepest fear too soon or with the wrong person. You give them a blueprint to your emotional wiring, and not everyone is equipped or mature enough to hold that with care. Psychologically speaking, fear is a powerful lever. If someone knows what triggers your anxiety, your insecurity, your shame, they can intentionally or not begin to manipulate your behavior. Let me paint a simple example. Imagine you once confided in a partner that your biggest fear was being abandoned. At first, they comfort you, but over time they begin pulling away in small, calculated ways. They ignore texts just long enough to make you question your worth. They withdraw affection when you express a need, not because they're evil, but because your fear gives them power. Or maybe you told a friend that you're terrified of failure, and now every time you try something new, they jokingly remind you of that time you messed up, planting just enough doubt to make you hesitate. This is why Jung emphasized self-awareness before self-disclosure. You must first integrate your fear, understand where it comes from, what it wants to teach you, before you hand it to someone else. Because when your fear is unprocessed, unhealed, it isn't a story, it's still a wound. And wounds, when handed over to the wrong hands, often become weapons. So what can you do? You start by getting curious. Sit with your fear, not to fix it immediately, but to befriend it. Ask yourself, when did I first start feeling this way? Whose voice does this fear sound like? What am I trying to protect by hiding it? Jung taught that only by bringing the unconscious into the light can we begin to transform it. And sometimes that light is a journal. Sometimes it's therapy. Sometimes it's simply allowing yourself to admit the fear to yourself. Without shame, without urgency, without judgment. Let me say this clearly. Your deepest fear is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you where you still need to grow stronger, where you still carry pain, where you still need grace. But that lesson is for you first, not the world, not social media, not even your closest friend unless they've earned the right to witness that part of you. Because once you've made peace with your fear, once it no longer controls your decisions or reactions, then and only then will you know if sharing it serves your growth or simply seeks validation. So let me ask you, what is the one fear you carry that still shapes how you move through the world? And what would happen if you faced it, not with words, but with compassion? Let's talk about something we all carry but rarely speak of: regret. Not the casual kind, like wishing you had ordered something different at dinner, but the deeper kind, the kind that lives in the body, the kind that shows up when the world goes quiet, a choice you made, a mistake that still haunts you, a moment when you wish you had been someone else, and the hardest part, you may have never truly forgiven yourself for it. Carl Jung believed that we cannot become whole until we confront the parts of ourselves we've disowned, and regret is one of the heaviest pieces in that puzzle. Here's what many people don't realize. When you share a regret before you've made peace with it, it doesn't heal you. It exposes you. And worse, it gives others the power to define your worth through the lens of your lowest moment. You might expect compassion, but receive judgment. You might hope for understanding, but get distance instead. Why? Because most people respond to vulnerability based on their own unhealed wounds, not your truth. And when your story is still raw, unprocessed, and tangled in guilt, it's not ready to be held by someone else. Psychologically speaking, this is crucial. Modern trauma research shows that unhealed shame seeks validation, not integration, which means when you confess a regret, you haven't forgiven yourself, for you're actually asking someone else to carry the pain you haven't yet learned to carry yourself. But here's the deeper issue. They can't. And when they don't respond the way you needed, you feel even more alone, more broken, more judged. Let me give you an example. A woman once opened up to a new friend about a mistake she had made years ago, a time when she betrayed someone she loved. She wasn't proud of it. She hadn't forgiven herself for it. She shared it, hoping the friend would say, "You're not a bad person." Instead, the friend pulled away, not because she was cruel, but because she wasn't equipped to hold that kind of story. And just like that, the woman's shame deepened, not because of the past, but because she shared it too soon. Carl Jung would say, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Regret that isn't healed becomes a silent driver. It shows up in how you trust others, how you speak to yourself, how you self-sabotage every time something good begins to bloom. So what can you do? Start by honoring the story privately. You don't need an audience, you need a mirror, a journal, a place where honesty and compassion can meet. Write it down, every part of it, not just the action, but the emotion, the why behind it, the version of you who made that choice. And then start separating your identity from your behavior. You are not what you did. You are what you choose to become after you've faced it. Forgiveness is a quiet process, and it starts with you. Only when your regret no longer holds power over your sense of self. Only when you can tell the story without needing redemption from someone else. Then and only then will you know if it's meant to be shared. So let me ask you this. What are you still holding against yourself? And who would you be if you finally let it go? That's the real question. You don't owe anyone your shame, and you don't need to bleed in front of others to prove that you're healing. Sometimes the most powerful form of release is what happens in silence, not performance, not confession, just quiet self-given grace. Let's talk about sacrifice, not the kind that's celebrated, not the kind that gets applause or earns a medal, but the kind you carry quietly, alone. The late nights you stayed up to care for someone who never said thank you. The opportunities you let go of so someone else could have a better chance. The version of yourself you buried so others could feel safe, loved, or supported. These are the silent sacrifices, the ones no one sees, the ones that don't make it to Instagram or family dinner conversations, and yet they shape you more than anyone knows. Carl Jung believed that sacrifice, when done unconsciously, can distort the self. Because when we give too much without processing why, we start to confuse self-worth with suffering. And here's where it gets dangerous. When we share these sacrifices too early or with the wrong intention, they stop being acts of love and start becoming silent pleas for validation. You might think, but don't I deserve to be acknowledged for everything I've given up? Of course you do. But here's the thing, acknowledgement from others is never guaranteed. And when we depend on it to feel seen, our inner strength begins to rot into quiet resentment. Psychologically, this is known as externalized self-worth, where our value is only real when someone else reflects it back to us. Let me give you a real-world example. A man once told me he had sacrificed his dream of becoming a musician to stay close to home and take care of his family. He never spoke of it until years later when, in a heated moment, he said to his brother, "You have no idea what I gave up for you." And just like that, what was once noble became bitter. Not because the sacrifice wasn't real, but because it was shared too late with too much pain and not enough healing. Carl Jung would say, "What is not brought to consciousness comes to us as fate." In other words, the sacrifices we don't understand or own with intention end up controlling how we see ourselves and how we treat others. So what's the solution? Hold your sacrifice as sacred, not as a story to be performed, but as a truth to be honored within yourself first. Write about it, reflect on it, ask yourself, did I do this out of love or out of fear that I wasn't enough unless I gave everything? That's where transformation begins. Because when you understand the why behind what you gave up, you reclaim the strength that came with it without needing anyone else to validate it. You also prevent the most subtle kind of self-betrayal when you start expecting people to repay a debt they never knew you were collecting. So if you've made sacrifices for people who never said thank you, if you've poured yourself out in silence, if you've held the weight so others could fly, know this, you don't need to broadcast it to make it real. Your quiet courage is not less valuable because it's invisible. Jung believed that the soul grows in silence, that true power comes not from being seen, but from standing in truth, even when no one else is looking. So here's the question worth asking yourself. Is this something I need to be recognized for? Or is this something I need to finally recognize within myself? Because once you do your sacrifice, no longer defines your pain, it defines your integrity. And from that place, you'll find peace, not pity. You'll find clarity, not craving. And most of all, you'll find that you didn't lose yourself in the giving. You became more of who you were always meant to be. Let's talk about your vision, that big, bold, deeply personal dream you carry in your heart. Maybe it's the business you've been quietly building, the book you've been writing in your head for years, the life you're planning that no one around you fully understands. There's something sacred about that vision. It doesn't come from the outside. It doesn't come from trends or pressure or what people expect of you. It comes from deep within, a whisper from the soul. Carl Jung would call it a seed of individuation, the unique path your life is trying to grow into. But here's the warning, share that vision too early, and you risk killing it, not because it's weak, but because it's still becoming. Jung believed that transformation begins in silence, that before the world sees who you are becoming, you need to see it first clearly privately, and without the distortion of other people's opinions. You see, when you tell someone your dream too soon, a strange thing happens. Your brain releases dopamine. It feels good. You get a hit of reward, almost like you've already accomplished it. But that reward is false. It's called goal substitution in modern psychology. The mind mistakes talking about the goal for doing the work. And slowly, the fire fades. Even worse, when you share your vision with someone who doesn't understand it or doesn't believe in you, they project their limitations onto your potential. They say things like, "That's ambitious, don't get your hopes up. That's risky. What if it doesn't work out? You really..." And just like that, your excitement turns into doubt, your momentum into hesitation. Let me tell you a quick story. A man I met once had a dream of building a healing center in the mountains, a place for people to come and reconnect with themselves. He told his co-workers one day, casually. They laughed, not cruelly but dismissively. "That sounds like a fantasy. Do you even know how to run something like that?" He never brought it up again. And years later, he admitted, "I wasn't crushed by the doubt. I was crushed by how quickly I let their voices override my own." That's the danger of speaking your vision into a world that hasn't earned the right to hear it. Carl Jung would say, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And your vision, your deepest purpose, is not a pitch. It's not content. It's not something to post or explain or justify. It's a process, a becoming, and it deserves to grow in silence. So here's the question to reflect on. Am I sharing my dream because I'm ready to act on it? Or because I'm seeking permission to believe in it? Because if it's the second, then you're giving your power away. Instead, let your work speak. Let your results emerge. Let your actions become your loudest voice. There's something incredibly powerful about walking toward your dream without telling anyone. Not out of secrecy, but out of respect. Respect for the energy it takes to build something real. Respect for the sacredness of your own becoming. And respect for the silence that surrounds all meaningful transformation. So if you have a vision right now, something that feels too big, too personal, too important to explain, hold it close. Let it take root. Let it grow quietly. Let it shape you before it shapes the world. And one day when it's ready, you won't need to explain it. People will feel it. They'll see it. And most importantly, you will have become it. Have you ever had a dream that felt like a message, or a moment of intuition that was so sharp it felt like you were being guided by something bigger than yourself? Or maybe in total stillness you suddenly felt connected to something ancient, divine, or simply unexplainable. If you've experienced anything like that, you know how sacred those moments can be. But you've also probably learned something else not everyone will understand. Carl Jung believed that these mystical experiences, the dreams, the visions, the sudden bursts of knowing, are not accidents. He called them the language of the unconscious. They are symbols sent from deep within, from the part of you that exists beyond logic, beyond time, beyond the ego. But here's where it gets complicated. When you try to share these sacred experiences with someone who doesn't have the depth or the openness to receive them, they often reduce what's meaningful to them into something that sounds like nonsense to others. You say, "I had a dream that felt like a prophecy." They say, "You've been watching too many movies." You say, "I just had a feeling something was going to happen," and it did. They say, "It's probably just a coincidence," and just like that, the magic starts to fade. Not because your experience wasn't real, but because someone else couldn't hold it. Psychologically, this is incredibly important. When you're still learning to trust your intuition, when your inner world is just beginning to awaken, it's fragile. It's vulnerable to judgment. And when it gets dismissed or ridiculed, especially by someone close to you, it can create a rupture, not just in the relationship, but inside you. Carl Jung warned about this. He said that unprocessed spiritual experiences can easily be misunderstood as delusion, especially in a culture obsessed with logic and proof. And if you let the world convince you that your inner experience is just your imagination, you start to turn away from one of the most powerful tools you have, your connection to the unconscious. Let me share a real story. A woman once told me she had a recurring dream of standing in a forest hearing the same phrase whispered over and over again, "Remember who you are." She woke up crying, shaken, but somehow at peace. It felt sacred to her, like her soul was trying to remind her of something lost. She shared it with a friend, and the response, "Weird. That's kinda creepy." That one comment made her stop journaling her dreams. She began doubting herself, and the deeper meaning of that message was pushed aside. Here's the truth Jung would want you to remember. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Mystical experiences are not meant for the world to validate. They are meant for you to explore. They are not posts. They are not proofs. They are portals to deeper understanding, to transformation, to self-integration. So here's what I'd suggest. If you've had a dream, an insight, a spiritual moment that feels too big to explain, don't explain it. Protect it. Write it down. Sit with it. Meditate on it. Ask yourself, what is this trying to show me about myself? Why did this come to me now? Because when you protect your inner wisdom, instead of outsourcing it for approval, it begins to strengthen, it becomes clearer, and it starts guiding you, not because someone else confirmed it, but because you chose to listen. Let your spiritual moments mature in private. Let them teach you something before you try to teach someone else. Let them become part of your story, not because someone else believed you, but because you finally believed yourself. So let me leave you with a question. What sacred inner experience have you dismissed because someone else didn't understand it? And more importantly, what would happen if you trusted it anyway? That might be the beginning of your awakening. So, what have we learned? Not all truths are meant to be spoken out loud. Not every wound is ready to be shown. Not every insight is meant to be offered to the world the moment it arrives. Carl Jung said something that still echoes in the hearts of those who walk the path of self-awareness. Some truths must be healed before they are shared, and that's not weakness, it's wisdom. In a world obsessed with exposure, we've confused vulnerability with oversharing. We've mistaken silence for shame, and we've forgotten that the most sacred parts of who we are often require solitude, stillness, and time. You see your deepest fears, your old regrets, the sacrifices you've made in silence, even your visions, your dreams, your spiritual awakenings. These are not things to throw out into the open like confetti. They're not sound bites for social media. They're seeds, and seeds don't bloom in chaos. They need protection, darkness, patience. When you share something too soon before you've processed it, before it has matured inside you, it risks being misunderstood, minimized, or even weaponized. And when that happens, you begin to mistrust your own truth. This is why Jung emphasized the inner journey. Healing is not performance. Growth is not something you prove. It's something you live quietly, until it becomes visible without needing explanation. So let me ask you something. Not as a content creator, but as a fellow traveler on this deeply human path, what are you holding in your heart right now? Not because you're hiding it, but because you know it's sacred. What insight have you kept to yourself because it's still taking shape? What truth are you quietly protecting? Not out of fear, but out of deep respect, because that is where your real strength lies. It's not in how loudly you speak, it's in how deeply you listen to yourself. As we wrap up this video, I want to invite you to do something simple but powerful. Take a breath, place a hand on your chest, and just ask yourself, is this mine to share yet, or is this still mine to understand? You don't owe the world your raw pages. You owe yourself the time to finish the chapter. And if today's message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your inner power, your inner work, your sacred inner truths, then this is your space. Subscribe to this channel to keep walking this path with us, one insight at a time. Drop a comment below and finish this sentence. I'm keeping this truth to myself because let's create a space not for loud opinions, but for quiet strength. A place where healing isn't rushed, where silence is respected, and where the deepest parts of your soul finally feel seen. Because as Jung would say, you are not what you show the world. You are what you protect when no one's watching.